Hi there, welcome back to the archives. I'm going to revisit the warriors, queens, and intellectuals. Um, 36 great women before the 1400s. My battery's dying. Today I'm going to do Herodias. We're going to do Herodias just because she's a little bit earlier, and then I'll start to go back according to the timeline. So, the film, I think Herodias is the second one in the series. It starts with Julia, um, Caesar Augustus's daughter, Augustus Caesar's daughter, whatever, however you say it. And then it goes into Herodias. And so we're looking at roughly 4 BCE. She was born in 15 BCE, so she was born 15 years before Christ was even born, right? Before Jesus was even born. And she dies 39 CE, so she dies a couple years after Jesus is born, but we're going to get into Herodias. So, this is the kingdom of Judea, right? We're talking modern day Palestine. The kingdom of Judea, was facing a crisis. And so King Herod the Great had died, and he had ruled for 32 years. So Judea was a client kingdom of the Roman Empire. I was watching Chosen a couple weeks ago. The Chosen, which is a film series on Jesus, right? And you can get a sense of what the dynamic was like at the time in Jerusalem and Judea and their connection with the Roman Empire, right? You can sense the fear there. They didn't want to disrupt the Romans. They didn't like it. There was just like we don't want the Romans to come, and it just you can sense the tension watching The Chosen, and you get a feel for it based on Dr. Joyce. Oh, this is the series. The research comes from Dr. Joyce E. Salisbury. I don't know where the DVD set is. Oh, there it is. Um, and so, yeah, basically, Judea was a client kingdom of the Roman Empire, and um, King Herod's will called for the land to be ruled um, and divided between his three sons. So King Herod had three sons. Okay, once he died, in his will, he left the land to be divided between his three sons. Archelaus basically got vast majority of what would be present day Palestine, right? Antipas and Philip. The Roman emperor at the time was Caesar Augustus. He confirmed this will. So the land was divided, each son ruled their land as Herod the Great had. They had to keep the peace, they had to pay the taxes so that Rome wouldn't get involved. Like again, no one wanted Rome to get involved, right? And so this episode is going to follow King Herod the Great's son, Herod Antipas. So I think that was his second born, perhaps. So Herod the Antipas controlled Galilee and Perea. Antipas's second wife was Herodias, right? Basically, the sources of her story comes from the Bible. So Dr. Joy says the sources for Herodias's life comes from the Bible, which again you'll find Herodias in the Bible, as well as a Jewish scholar who was named at the time Titus Claudius Josephus. So Josephus is also a historian that kind of gives us account of Herodias's life. So in the first century, so again, this is the first century, right? We're talking 4 BC, 39. We're not even at the hundreds yet. So this is the first century. Judea was plagued by three problems, right? Today, if you go to Israel, like a lot of Israelis will talk about Judea and Samaria. This is the area where we're talking about, right? Where Jesus was born. We're going to get into it. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, right? Jerusalem. These are the areas that we're talking about right now. Take in mind, at this time, Christianity has not been birthed, so there is no such thing as Christianity at this time, and there is no such thing as Islam at this time, right? Right in this art, one, we're talking paganism is there, and Judaism is there. If you look at other regions as well too, I just did one on the Trunk sisters. So there's indigenous. The Vietnamese have their own traditional religions. So do those in Japan and China, right? But Christianity has not been born yet. Christianity is coming, is being born as Jesus is coming, but Christianity is not there. Islam is not there at this time either. Okay, we're focusing right now on Judaism and paganism. Even we'll talk about a Persian king. Even the Persians at the time, the Arabs were considered quote unquote pagan. Just keep that in mind. So first century Judea has three problems, right? The first one is the relations with the Roman overlords. The second one is the negotiating degrees of Jewish orthodoxy, right? How strictly do Jewish people follow scripture under Roman Empire, right? Especially a Roman Empire that controls with like multiculturalism. That was the second one. The third challenge was within Judaism itself, as competing sects vied for the soul of the religion, right? Which sect of Judaism is most pure, for instance. So Herodias was Jewish. Um, and a lot of the Jewish folks at that time did not appreciate being ruled by quote unquote pagans, right? The pagan outsiders. This is what Dr. Joyce says. And so Antipas arrives and he visited Rome many, many times, right? Because he wanted to be on good terms with Rome. Again, there's this need to be on good terms with Rome and the Roman Empire. And so his brother Archelaus got most of Judea and Samaria. So Archelaus was primarily the ruler of Judea and Samaria, including Jerusalem, right? Archelaus was in charge of Jerusalem. And so, but Jerusalem was still ruled and controlled by Rome, right? And Rome sent Pontius Pilate. If you remember Pontius Pilate, Rome sent Pontius Pilate to be the governor at that time of the province. And so Caesar Augustus dies, right? Remember Caesar Augustus, that's Julia's father. Tiberius comes in to rule. Remember Tiberius was the one that Julia ended up marrying, and she was like, I don't want to be married to him anymore. I've given you guys 3, 4 kids. I'm going to be emancipated. And then once Caesar Augustus died, Tiberius got his revenge on Julia. That Tiberius, okay? So at this point, Tiberius replaces Augustus as the emperor in Rome, okay? But in Jerusalem, in the province, in Judea and Samaria, it's Pontius Pilate who's the governor. And so Antipas built a new capital city on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. This was near the holy healing hot springs. So there's healing hot springs. He decides, I'm going to set the capital city here. And he was basically a suck up. He decided, like, I'm going to name the city, the new capital, after Tiberius. So he names the new capital after Tiberius. A lot of the Jewish Orthodox folks they refused to move there. They didn't want to live there because they said that the area was a burial grounds, right? It was a cemetery. It was unclean. This is not where good good Jews lived. It's this unclean territory. So a lot of Jewish folks actually did not move to that territory. So instead, Antipas brought in outsiders, foreigners, freed slaves, and poor people who were just too poor to care about where they lived, right? People who were just like, I don't care if this is built on slaves and cemeteries, not slaves, cemeteries and dead people. You want to invite us? We're going to move in. And so the region started to grow. It became really vibrant. Um, it, and so Today, it's known as one of the four sacred, one of the most holiest cities, including Jerusalem, Hebron, and Safed, right? So Antipas, he visits Rome frequently. He's trying to kiss ass. He wants to be on good terms with the Romans because he doesn't want no trouble. He doesn't want no begging mix up, right? On a visit to Rome is when he went to stay with his half brother. His half brother, which is Herod the Second. Herod the Second's wife was Herodias. Okay, are you clocking it? So Herod the Great, his son Antipas, goes to Rome to visit his half brother Herod the Second, and his Herod the Second's wife is Herodias. She was a granddaughter of Herod the Great. So they're related because Herod the Great's son and Herodias is Herod the Great's granddaughter. So we're talking incest here. Remember, incest was just like everyday occurrence back then. So Herodias, she's a granddaughter of Herod the Great. She was married at an early age to Herod the Second. Okay, the Gospels of Matthew, Dr. Joyce says that if you look at the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, it says that she was married to a man named Philip. Dr. Joyce says the Gospels were wrong. So then you wonder what else was the Gospels wrong about. But I'm not going to be blasphemous. I'm just going to just stick to the script, okay? But according, word on the street is Matthew and Mark were wrong because Herodias was never married to a man named Philip before. She was actually married to Herod II. So they had a daughter named Salome, right? Herodias and Herod II had a daughter named Salome. Salome was born in 14 CE. Well, Antipas falls in love with Herodias. He falls in love with his half-brother's wife. He proposes that they marry, and Herodias is like, okay, but only under one condition. You have to divorce who you're married to, and I have to divorce who I'm married to, then I will marry you. So Antipas was already married, okay? He was already married to the daughter of a powerful Arabian king. And again, when we're talking about Arabian king, it's not Muslims. The Arabian king was not Muslim because Islam was not a thing at the time. It was a pagan. It was I would be their indigenous, whatever the indigenous practice of Persians and Arabians were. So Antipas, Herod's son, was married to what was her name? Facetius, I think her name was. She was an Arabian princess. Herodias said, you have to divorce that Arabian princess. I will get divorced to Herod II, then we can get married. Antipas says, bet. I'm willing to risk it all. He risked it all. So Antipas gets a divorce. He leaves his wife, okay, who didn't see it coming. She didn't even know. She found out through the grapevine. And Herodias gets a divorce with Herod II. Here's where it gets messy. Antipas's wife, the Persian princess, leaves town because she doesn't want to get killed, right? Now that she's divorced, she goes back to Arabia. Her father was King Aridus of Nabatea. Where is Nabatea? I was supposed to look that up. I don't know what is modern day Nabatea. You tell me. So she leaves and runs back to her father, right? She goes back to the Arabian king and she's like, this man just left me for Herodias. Her father's like, over my dead body. You will not disrespect my daughter that way. He goes to war. Women literally started war in history. So her father goes to war with Antipas, okay? Literally war. And her father whoops Antipas's army's ass. Like, the Arabians are whooping their ass. Antipas is like, holy shit, I don't know what I got myself into. I should have just stayed married to this girl. Rome, we need your help. Antipas goes to Rome. He's like, Tiberius, I need your help. We are getting our ass whooped by the Arabians. Rome sends an army. They finally defeat the Arabians. Okay. It says the Arabs, but again, remember Arabs does not necessarily mean Muslims. So the Roman army is sent with the help of Tiberius. They finally defeat the Arabs. Okay. But this damages the reputation. This damages Antipas's reputation with Rome because Tiberius is like, how I get in it? How did I get in it? First of all, you came to Rome, stole my brethren's wife, started a war with the Arabs, and then you're asking me to come help you fight the Arabs? You started this mess. Nobody asked you to divorce anybody. Nobody asked you to do none of this. So Tiberius is just like not feeling it. Okay? The Jewish people are not feeling it because now Antipas, not only did you start war, but you went against Jewish customs. This is not what we do. You're not supposed to marry your brother's wife. So Antipas is just in a whole bag of mix up. Like for real, for real, for real, okay? Not only did he get his ass whooped by the Arabs, then he had to call daddy, like the Romans, to come save him. But now he's in trouble with the Jewish folks, right? Because you have to remember, at the time, Jewish laws were very strict about marriage. And so there was a strict prohibition about being a married woman leaving her living husband for another man. So Herodias already is like in the bad books because you're not, Jewish law prohibits a married woman leaving her living husband for another man. Strike one. Jewish laws also, especially if there was a child involved. Remember, she has a daughter, Salome. So that's like a huge red flag, right? Strike one for Herodias. She crossed the line. Well, so did Antipas, because Jewish laws also prohibits um, for a woman to marry her husband's brother. So that's strike two. Your man is still alive and you left him for another man. Strike one. Not only did you leave your living husband for another man, you left him for his brother. Strike two. So the Jews were like, mm-mm-mm-mm. Okay. So she did that. She did that too. So Antipas was, remember, Antipas and Herod the second are half brothers. So there's a division between Jewish people at the time. We see this in the Gospels as well. So uh, let me just, in order to understand some of this, Dr. Joyce goes into some of the different sects of Judaism at the times. So there was, according to Dr. Joyce, the Sadducees. They were the most lenient, right? They kind of were like, well, we're willing to make some exceptions as long as you worship in the temple and you observe worship at temple. Okay, we can be a little bit lenient. We can eat some of these things. We can intermingle. So the Sadducees were a little bit more lenient. The Pharisees refused to compromise. Okay, they did not want to compromise with the Roman world. They adhered to strict dietary rules, and they reinforced separation between Jews and non-Jews. Okay, so the Pharisees are a little bit more strict. Then we have the Essenes. Is that how you say it? The Essenes. They were more strict. They were even more strict than the Pharisees, and they were just like, we don't want none of. I don't want to participate at all. I'm leaving town. We are going into the desert. We are going to go live in the wilderness. We're going to go follow our strict Jewish customs. We don't even want to participate. So the Essenes just left town altogether. They moved into the wilderness. They lived in the desert. They refused to participate. Okay. Then there's the Zealots. The Zealots were also really hardcore. But instead of leaving, they wanted to overthrow Rome and introduce a free Jewish state. So the Zealots were like, you're not running us out of town. We're staying right here. Matter of fact, we're going to overthrow you. Okay, so those are some of the different sects that Dr. Joyce shares. And so Jesus and John the Baptist are coming up around this time, right? They're becoming to be prophets. You have to remember Jesus was born in Bethlehem. John was born in En Karim, which is they were born a few months apart. I believe that John the Baptist was older. They were cousins. And so by the time that Jesus and John were starting their missions, Antipas and Herodias were ruling. They were already married. They were ruling the region. And so their lives intersected. John the Baptist, the baptizer is what he was called then. John was the first to come to Herodias and Antipas's awareness, their attention, right? John was a preacher. He modeled the Essenes, right? So John, meaning he lived in the wilderness. He wanted nothing to do with the Roman ways that had taken control of Judea. John the Baptist was like, I don't want nothing to do with these Romans. I'm strictly following my Jewish customs. And he lived in the wilderness for a while. John the Baptist, he would baptize people. His mission was all about redemption, right? He baptized people in the river of Jordan, of Antipas's kingdom. This cleansing would wash them of their sins, he said. And like I said, he was known as John the Baptizer. He really was not a fan of Antipas and Herodias. He was not a fan. And he was vocal about it. John the Baptist was just vocal about his disdain for Antipas and Herodias. He was like, "You heathens, why did you leave your man for your brother?" John the Baptist was not about it. So he was really, really critical of Herodias and Antipas, right? He was just like, this is unlawful. Marrying his brother's wife is just not great. So Herodias did not like him. She did not like. A lot of people don't like people who talk shit about them, right? How many of you guys like people who talk shit about you, right? Herodias was like, who are you? Why is John the Baptist? Why is my name in your mouth? And so she did not. She had a vendetta against John the Baptist. So John, mind you, has a really large influence. He has a huge following. John the Baptist has a huge following. He's super popular. This is what makes him most threatening. This is what makes him threatening. Because Antipas and Herodias think that he's a zealot. They're like, oh, he's going to overthrow us. If we're not careful, John the Baptist is going to turn the people, he's already turning people against us. People are already criticizing us. Herodias was not having it. Okay? Um, she was like, people are ready to do what he wants. He needs to be gone. He needs to be gone. So basically what happened was, um, I, they had him arrested. She had him arrested. So she basically was like, John is a zealot. He's inciting violence. He's inciting people to rise against us. Antipas had John the Baptist arrested. The gospel goes into more detailed accounts and paints Herodias as the villain, right? Again, remember that Matthew and Mark were already wrong about Herodias. So I don't know if you can completely believe what the gospels are saying about it, but the gospels frame her as a villain. Herodias is a villain in Christianity. Like she's not. Christians don't like her. And I think some Jewish people would say that is the anti-Semitism, right? A lot of Jewish folks would say that Christians, Catholicism, it is really anti-Semitic because it bans Jewish folks in a bad light. This is perpetuating some of that anti-Semitism, right? Herodias is painted as a villain. And so, according to the Bible, it was Herodias who had John the Baptist beheaded. She didn't just have him arrested. She didn't just have him killed. She had him beheaded. What happened? Okay, so Antipas, his birthday comes along, right? It's Antipas's birthday. Herodias is like, I'm gonna throw my man a birthday party. I'm gonna invite all his friends. She had all his boys there, all the big boys from Galilee, Samaria. Everybody, all of like the in crowd, right? The A crowd, like the top tier. Everybody comes to Antipas's birthday. Antipas gets drunk, 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 drunk. He just gets drunk. Herodias thinks it's a good idea to bring her daughter, Salome. Herodias is like, daughter, come to the birthday party. I want you to dance for these men. Mind you, her daughter's 15 at the time. So Herodias is like, as a mom, I think it's a great idea to invite my 15-year-old daughter to dance for these grown-ass men, including her stepfather. The men loved it. Antipas was so pleased in his drunken stupor. He was like, Salome, that was such a good dance. I will give you anything in the world that you ask for, including half of my land. Like he's just blabbling. He promises to give Herodias' daughter Salome whatever she wants. Okay? And because he made this in front of people, he has to honor it. Because like we saw you. We heard you say that you will give her whatever she wants. So Salome goes to her mom and she's like, Mom, what do I ask for? Her mom is like, ask for John the Baptist to be beheaded. Oh, damn. Okay. So said, so done. So Salome goes back to Antipas and is like, remember when you got drunk on your birthday and you said I could have anything I wanted? Well, this is a really long pitch right here. Well, I want John the Baptist to be beheaded. And that's as a favor to her mom. So, yeah, that's how John the Baptist was beheaded. Antipas had to follow through because this is a promise he made. Antipas sent the soldiers to the prison where John was. They had him beheaded. They brought his head back so Herodias could see it. She was happy. So that's how John the Baptist was beheaded. Herodias had her daughter ask Antipas to behead him. So you see why the Christians don't really like her. Well, it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there, because don't forget there's also Jesus. This is 26 minutes long. Don't forget there's Jesus. So once he heard that John had been killed, once Jesus heard that John had been killed, Jesus was off in the wilderness, right? 40 days, 40 nights. We know that Jesus went off to the wilderness. So once he heard that John had been killed, Jesus returns to preaching the good news, right? He's spreading his performing his miracles, and word gets back to Antipas and Herodias that Jesus is really powerful, right? Jesus is really, really powerful. Like he curing the blind, he's making the blind see, raising the dead, and they're like, oh my God, it is John the Baptizer. He is back, and he's raised from the dead in the form of Jesus, right? Because Jesus is seen as a prophet now. So Antipas is terrified of Jesus. They're all scared of Jesus because they think that John the Baptist is like coming back, risen through Jesus, okay? So Jesus is also very popular. Jesus is even more popular than John the Baptist. Jesus has an even bigger following than John the Baptist. Antipas is shaking in his boots. He is shaking. He is shook. He's like, oh my God, I killed this man, and this man is back, and he is back in the form of Jesus. And so, mind you, Jesus denounced the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Jesus was not a fan of Jesus was more like, what was that called? Jesus was more like an Essene. He was like John the Baptist. He was more like an Essene, right? So he's really strict, didn't really follow the Roman ways, but he also was denounced the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Antipas wanted to meet Jesus. He was actually like, who is this man? I want to meet him. So once Jesus gets arrested in Jerusalem, he's brought to Pontius Pilate, right? Because Pontius Pilate apparently was a cruel administrator. Apparently, Dr. Joyce says that the Bible downplays how bad Pontius Pilate is. Like he was worse than what the Bible made him look at. Apparently, Pontius Pilate was just terrible. He ignored Jewish customs. And so Jesus was brought to Pontius Pilate by the local Jewish priests who accused him of being Christ, the king. So Pilate found a loophole, right? Because he didn't find anything wrong with what Jesus was doing, but the people did. So Pontius Pilate found a loophole and was like, well, technically, Jesus is a Galilean. He falls under Antipas's jurisdiction. Let me send Jesus to Antipas. So Pontius Pilate sends Jesus to Antipas, which Antipas is like, finally get to meet Jesus, right? But Jesus was not having it either. Jesus did not talk. So Jesus refused to talk to Antipas. Jesus refused to talk to Antipas. This pissed Antipas off. He's like, send this man back to Pontius Pilate. Just send Jesus back to Pontius Pilate. He's embarrassing me. He refuses to talk to me. He has a tantrum. So Jesus gets sent back to Pontius Pilate, who still hasn't found anything. He still found Jesus innocent, but the local people didn't, right? The crowd wanted Jesus crucified. So said, so done. We know how that story ends. Jesus gets crucified. So John and Jesus' death were only drops in the bucket of controversy that Pontius Pilate had. Like, he was way worse. Like, Jesus and John the Baptist, that wasn't even the crux of it. Like, apparently Rome didn't even hear about Jesus's crucifixion yet. That wasn't what brought Rome to destroy Jerusalem, because after Jesus died, Pontius Pilate was still on his bad behavior, and so that makes you think. Like, Jesus, to us, Jesus is huge, especially to Christians, but Jesus' death, John the Baptist's death, it was just a drop in the bucket, apparently, according to Dr. Joyce, because Rome didn't even hear about Jesus at that time, right? But eventually, Pontius Pilate was removed later, and because people were growing dissatisfied, there was just a lot more violence. He would continue to build until it brought down the wrath of Rome. So the Roman armies marched into Judea 30 years later. After Antipas ruled, they destroyed Jerusalem. They destroyed the temple and other great Jewish cities. In 37 CE, Tiberius died, and Caligula comes to rule. With the change in power in Rome came a change in power in Judea. Herodias wasn't happy about it, right? So Herodias' brother Agrippa, remember Agrippa? Well, I've already talked about Agrippa before. So Agrippa was Herodias' brother. I didn't know that. Agrippa had left to go to Rome. He left Judea and Samaria, escaped to Rome, and had become really good friends with um, Caligula, right? So Agrippa and Caligula are friends. Caligula becomes the emperor. He then gives Agrippa the land that once belonged to Philip and Archelaus. He makes Agrippa the king of the region. And so when Agrippa returned to Judea as king, his brother Herodias was furious. She was so mad. She's so much envy. She's like, how did my brother, I was a queen, how did my brother get all of our land? Herodias was so jealous. She tells Antipas, let's go to Rome, let's go oppose this decision. Antipas was like, no, just leave it. Let Agrippa do what he wants. She was like, no, we need to go to Rome. We need to get Caligulus to reverse this and make us king and queen. And so Agrippa heard what his sister was plotting, and he went to Rome at the same time. He also traveled to Rome. He accused his sister and Antipas of treason. Um, and of course, his friend, the emperor, is gonna believe him. Like, he's gonna take his side. Like, I'm gonna take my homeboy's side. I don't care for Antipas and Herodias. Oh, my ring fell off. And so basically, yeah, it didn't end well for Herodias. It did not end well. So Antipas and Herodias lost everything. They lost everything. It all went to Agrippa, including money. Antipas was exiled. He was exiled. He was sent somewhere else to live by himself. They gave Herodias an out because that's still Agrippa's sister, right? So Agrippa's like, just be a little bit lenient. That's my sister. Don't be so hard on her. Give her a way out. And Herodias was stubborn. She was like, mm-mm. She didn't take it. She didn't take it. And so she was sent into exile with her husband. They both died poor around 39 CE. And people said that that was God's punishment for what they had done for marrying them. So that's basically Herodias' story. It's messy, eh? Baby mama drama, baby daddy drama. It's just messy. So yeah, she took herself and she's seen as a villain within Christianity because she had John the Baptist beheaded. Um, and yeah, she died at 39 CE. So that means it said that Jesus died at 33. So that would have been 33 CE. So she died, yeah, 6 years later after Jesus. But that's Herodias' story. Basically, she's known for having John the Baptist beheaded. She's known for stealing Antipas and leaving Herod II. She's known for having her daughter basically dance for her husband and asking her daughter to behead John the Baptist. And in the end, she was exiled. She died poor. Um, so it's 35 minutes. I'm gonna go, but that's basically Herodias' story. Yeah. So until next time. Again, this is coming from Dr. Joy Salisbury. I don't want nobody to be like, Dorothy's anti-Semitic, she's spreading anti-Semitic. This is just what I learned just about history on Herodias. Um, so, what did you hear a different version of her? Again, I haven't read other texts other than Bible, so I'm not sure about. I haven't read Josephus's account on it, but this is the story of Herodias. Okay, until next time, in solidarity. It's World AIDS Day today, so I hope that you are observing um, all those that have been affected by the HIV and AIDS crisis. Okay, it's December 1st. Have a good December. Um, yeah, until next time, in solidarity.